So most of us over the last few decades have been indoctrinated, I might say, programmed, I might say, especially if you've been on a spiritual path or a consciousness path, you've been exposed to and maybe even convinced of the idea that you create your own reality. I used to do a workshop that when I was in Oregon, it was the karmic debt. I was not there very long. But I did this workshop that I called, "If I create my own reality, why am I getting this shit?" It's like, yeah, understand. So in the refinement of the way that we begin to understand how this external reality shows up, it arises in our consciousness, right? I mean, today we are all in each other's consciousness, we're in each other's reality. And what I've come to know about that in my own experience and in working with a lot of people and in groups is that it has to do with resonance, wherever there is resonance. And then what that points to is the idea of frequency, which is an aspect of, I call it my kindergarten model of quantum physics, where we talk about frequency. I don't have the education or the access to at the level of the science of it, but it models really pretty directly onto how our world shows up for us. The frequency of being at peace, we know what that feels like. The frequency of being in love, we know what that feels like. The frequency of being happy, right? So what the reality is made up of is a quantum reality that is in response to the frequency that we emit. When I came upon this idea of the way that we create our reality, it was not just interesting to me, it was in a way, it was startling, because what I realized pretty quickly was you can't fool Mother Nature. You can't pretend to be at a high frequency by being cute and funny and happy all the time. The frequency is your internal state of being, and that's the frequency that reality is in response to. So we have the opportunity for seeing what it is that keeps us at a lesser frequency or a lower frequency. And most of what that is has to do with our idea about ourselves that we call the early childhood wound, something that got installed like, I'm not good enough, or I don't matter. And in the model that I use for how that works then is that conclusion creates a distortion lens through which we see reality, we see the world, we see other people. And then when a person that we think we know walks by us at Long's and doesn't say anything, we believe that they don't like us anymore. If it was me walking by and didn't see, it's because I can't see shit, right? I can't see anything. But see, what the poet Anais Nin had a saying that points to this very specifically, and it is, we do not see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. And that's what we're always dealing with. And so as we clear the lens of perception, which got installed with that early conclusion when we didn't get fed on time, or the kindergarten teacher told us to sit on the back row, and we thought it meant something about us. And from that conclusion, we created this distortion lens. We have since then had some version of a world that was informed by that. So now we have an idea about ourselves that is distorted by the way we see what we see. And from that place, we are working. So doesn't it make sense if you think somebody doesn't like you and the next time you see them, you do one of two things. You're overly interested in them or you ignore them, right? Now, they don't understand why you're doing either one of those things because they didn't snub you. weren't caught up in the world that you were perceiving when they walked by you and lungs. So the opportunity to create a reality is based on us clearing the perceptual field that we see through, that was created by our early wounding. So when we get that clear, it's like, I think in the Bible it says, through a glass darkly, but then face to face. And now there's nothing between us and reality. And then typically what's between us and reality, it's like I was pointing to, which is the early childhood wound conclusion, but it is self-judgment. If I see a world through the lens of I'm not good enough, then I am always in response reaction, caught up in adaptive behaviors to not experience what I had concluded about myself. So it's the cleansing of the lenses of perception has to do with undoing the distortion in the lens. Right? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Anybody identify with having an early childhood conclusion?
Yeah.
Like that yeah, right. And that's what creates the me. And then the me is running around in these little body mind avatar suits that we wear for this projected reality, hiding out because it's not good enough, or asserting itself because it needs attention, or doing whatever it's doing, but it's not the experience of the aliveness that's available for the truth of who we are. So who am I? In reality, without this distortion field, without this limitation of an early childhood wound, who am I? I am the awake awareness in which realities arise. It's in my consciousness that this world shows up, right? This is what's true. This is who we are. Now, what world shows up in my consciousness is absolutely in response to who I believe I am and what I believe about the world, which is that distortion lens that we're talking about. What we're always experiencing is who we're being to ourselves. And when we've put in place the idea that I'm not good enough, or I'm not the one, or I can't do it right, when that's in place with our distortion lens, then who we can be to ourselves can be distorted and limited by that limited self-concept, right? How do I treat myself if I believe I'm not good enough? So in order to be present on one's own behalf, which is a part of the teaching here, we have to get clear of the distortion field that was put in place by the childhood wound. There's no way to circumvent it. There's no way in consciousness, the field of awareness of consciousness has all of this information in it. It's a frequency reality. I said that before. The reality that shows up, you will experience it through the lens of your limited idea about yourself that got installed when you were 18 months old, 2 years old, 9 months old, because it's not dependent on the ability to verbally express it. It's a response, reaction to the frequency, the energy in one's own body when they're not fed on time, when they're not taken care of by that caretaker. And it doesn't take much. You don't have to have a really lousy caretaker to conclude that you're not good enough, right? We're very quick to assume that it means something about the way we were treated. And so there isn't anybody who escapes the early wounding. The world that shows up for you as your reality, it has something to do with your self-perception. Who do you think, who are you? And the other thing it has to do with is the frequency of that self-perception. If you are coming home, that's what I believe is happening on the planet, is that we are returning home to our true nature, and we will create a new reality planetarily, a new heaven, a new earth. We are returning home to that by this dispelling of the distortion field. And we dispel it through seeing that it could never be true that I'm not good enough. I know who I am. I'm the awareness, right? The idea that there's a limitation here. Now, one of the things we know is that it's through this specific body-mind unit, we call it the avatar, that I am participating in, and experiencing an external reality. I think that's the nature of this reality, is for the fun of it, for the fun of being in a physical body. One of the aspects of the teaching we do here is underpinned by the work that Robin does and has written 4 books about, which is human design, which basically gives you a pattern for the vehicle that you're occupying. You're not this, you have this. You are the awake awareness that has this vehicle, that has its powers, its talents, its gifts to express through in this reality. The distortion comes along, like I've been pointing to, with the early, limited, fear-based conclusion. I don't matter. I'll never get what I want. And we began very early to create what I call adaptive behaviors to try to not experience what we concluded. So if I can figure out how to manipulate my mom or my dad, and because Christmas is coming soon, and I want this particular toy, and I can figure out how to manipulate them so they believe they thought of it and they get it from me, right? Then what I'm getting reinforced in is an adaptive behavior so that I get what I want, because I've left myself with the early wounding conclusion. I've left myself. So that's kind of the fundamental quick and dirty of the premise that this teaching is based in. Basically, that we are experiencing who we're being to ourselves, and who we take ourselves to be has been installed from a very early, unavoidable, but never true, limited conclusion about ourselves. So with that as a premise today, we can open the floor for questions. And Nancy, do I have water here?
Right here. No, we shouldn't give it to you in white.
You should what?
We shouldn't give you a white container. Yeah, Shakti.
Hello. I'm wondering if there's many different ways that that initial misperception can be awakened from, different techniques and styles.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, and with a different premise too. Coming to how this operates, is that what you're pointing to?
Mhm.
And then I'm sure there are many, many ways people could come to the freedom from the limited self-perception through a religious experience. They could come to a psychological understanding about birth trauma or about early childhood wound, and perhaps get free. The reason I found that this is so helpful is that it doesn't carry any of the trappings of religiosity or spirituality even. It's like it's the most pragmatic thing. What I realized early on that I was looking for is what it really is, whatever it is, and the way it really works, right? It's like, how does that work? And so as I've gone through many different paths myself, it's out of those that I've chosen this particular way to approach waking up. And what we're waking up out of is a lie about ourselves that we install and have done for many lifetimes, for sure. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, Shakti.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
You know, another way to probe all of this is clarity breath work. My friends Shoshana and Dana just finished writing an article about them and the power of accessing your birth and the trauma of your birth,
Mhm.
which is like the very, very beginning. And we all have it in various ways and shapes and forms, which again molds and shapes who we are as we grow.
Right.
So it's a powerful thought that you can
Yeah.
breathe your way into your rebirthing.
Well, what holotropic breathing does is it basically shuts the mind down and moves into the physicality, the
Right.
body, the frequency of in the vehicle. And it can evoke some experiences, and yeah, it can be very helpful.
Yeah.
Anything that puts you in touch with what you've been believing, and you may recognize what it is because it'll typically be tied to something that you didn't want to experience.
Mm.
It'll be tied to something like they don't like me, or why didn't I get what I wanted? Or it's going to be tied in that way. And so from our experience, we can for sure know that we're caught in a woundedness. If it doesn't feel good, you're caught in a woundedness. Otherwise, life is just what's happening. And at its minimum, it's peaceful, happy, and open. And at its maximum, on the good side, it's exciting and interesting and stimulating and connecting. Another way to play in this 3D reality.
So Polly, when you talk about life treating you, basically how you treat yourself is what would the words be? How you experience life, or
How you're treating yourself is what you're going to experience. It'll show up out here, so it'll look like it's from somebody else or from circumstances.
so is that like a perfect match, or is it in the vicinity of, or is it a metaphor of, or how do you?
Well, I do think that energetically it's probably close to a perfect match, but I don't think that it will be seen that way when you're looking for it. Like, in other words, the thing that happens out here may seem to oneself to be much worse than just my little, I'm not good enough, right? My little flippant, I'm not good enough. And then I have a catastrophe out here looking like a relationship or money difficulties or a health issue or whatever. So I don't think it registers piece for piece right on like that, parallel. But I do believe it is. I think energetically it is that. We're so accustomed to putting sugar over shit that we don't know. We don't know the difference. It's like becoming alert to what really you don't want to experience, and telling yourself the truth about it is the opening, and to come home to yourself, to start to be kinder to yourself, because that's at the heart of the matter. You are the world. And if you want the world to be different, you have to engage with where you make a difference, which is energetically. It's frequency wise.
So if you're experiencing something you don't like, you have to look inside and see how you're treating yourself.
Right. That would be one part of it, yeah. The work, the 6 steps to freedom process, which we do in these groups, these sanghas that we do together, has to do with directly correlating and experiencing a conclusion you made as a child that's now showing up in your world as what we would call a trigger. I didn't get, my son didn't call me on my birthday, right? So I'm triggered. So we use that with the 6 steps to freedom process. The first step is I'm triggered. The second step is to understand that it's about me. This triggering, this whole thing is about me. The third step is, what am I feeling? Well, he didn't call me. I'm feeling left out. I'm feeling not valued. I'm feeling whatever I'm feeling. The fourth step is to use that feeling to allow a recall of the earliest time you ever had that experience, right? Because now we're starting to move into the area of what's caused in the matter of the trigger. We're moving into the area, and the question is, what's the earliest time you can remember feeling that same way? The earliest time you remember feeling not valued, what was happening? You may have been in the crib. You may not have been fed on time. But in that experience early on, and often it's pre-verbal, in that experience, you've concluded something about yourself that now is the lens, the distortion lens we were talking about, through which you see everything, right?
And how do we clear that distortion lens?
Right, and that's the next step.
Oh,
Good work, Laura. Yeah. Yeah, it's like we just push it out of the way. It's like, I don't need that anymore. Enough already. Now, when you see what it was, when that happened in the crib, not getting fed on time, I'm not valued, I don't matter, right? That conclusion. And then the next step is to see that that was an unavoidable but never true, right? It's like from the perspective of awareness, I can see something that got installed. It's been active in my experience my whole lifetime, but it was the experience and the conclusion of an 18-month-old baby. Yeah. So it's in that seeing. So the fifth step is to see what you concluded, which is I'm not good enough, I'm not valued. The sixth step is to have the awareness, which is where we've come to now. We're looking at what happened, right? That early on, we're seeing what happened, the conclusion that got installed. And the light of that awareness is your true nature. I am the awake awareness in which everything shows up. Now I'm shining awake awareness on that early incident, that conclusion. I don't matter, I'm not valuable, and I can allow it to be dispelled. I didn't have that available to me when I was 18 months old. Right? So what we begin to do is know ourselves as the awake awareness in which all reality arises, and having the fun of a vehicle like a body-mind unit, and the mind being a big part of the fun for most of us. We're mentally engaged in them, and so we start to live in a peaceful, easy frequency of connection with ourselves. Because what happened with that earliest experience is we self-abandoned. We are now energetically installed. We have, I don't matter. And now we will have the reality. The sneaky thing about this is that whatever you installed with that early experience, in this case, I don't matter, you will have an experience of being, of mattering, right? Because our minds are caught in polarity. And then that will confuse the hell out of you. Because you've been going along, not getting the attention, not getting what you wanted, whatever. So that's aligned with I don't matter. And then all of a sudden you're like, homecoming queen or whatever, right? So it's like, but the whole thing is none of that feels solid. None of it feels secure. None of it feels like who I want to know myself as, because it's a distortion field. That can be confusing. I always say that the mind, the nature of the fall, the Garden of Eden is a metaphorical for the fall out of our hearts and into our minds, right? So now, instead of connecting, which is what we were doing before, we ate of the fruit of the knowledge. I call that the rational analytic dessert. It's like what we partake of, and now we've got to figure it out at the level of the problem. We move into cause and effect, right? And so the minute that we drop it back into our hearts, we learned through connection, through the feeling of what it means to be that little one who had the experience that I don't matter, I'm not valuable. And in that heart space, that's home, and the healing occurs. In the space of the polarity, right and wrong, good and bad, underpinned by the frequency of fear, which is another part of that metaphorical garden story, then we are caught in a projection. We're caught in a projection of that distortion field. This is so much information. I feel like I've just done a mind dump on you guys.
Okay, we have a couple hands up here.
They're waving. It's like,
I have my own. Lindsay, hang on, let me spotlight you. Okay.
Hello, and I'm just comfy over here, warm, in snowy Indiana. So I have more of a contribution. It's not really a question, except for, of course, I want Polly your interaction with what I'm going to share, I guess. So kind of piggybacking off of what Robin said in terms of like to experience who I'm being to myself. So just a few things come to mind, like the Old Testament, like I remember the veil from in the most holy of places, like it rips from the top to the bottom, like in a way that was unexplainable, like it was miraculous. And so it's like, as I increasingly am experiencing like that veil and that distance between, that separation between me and the world around me is just thinning and thinning and thinning. And I'm experiencing that as me, but I don't really know how to explain that. It's like and then also I've read Byron Katie's recounting of her awakening, and just how she says, I looked in the mirror and I'm using the eyes of Katie, but like it's like she's gone, but she's here. Like it's just that experience. And so and then someone very simplistically said on one of my LinkedIn posts, they said, everything that is me. And it's just like, so I guess just all of that put together, because I do think that sometimes the wording can be bulky, like I'm experiencing the world as I'm being to myself. But then as I think, like, as I bounce around these different layers of wording in different ways that people say it or interact with it, it's like the separation is just dissolving.
Yeah, the thing that separates us from apparent others and reality is our self-judgment. And so when that falls away, and all judgment goes with it, and you simply feel the field as arising in your own consciousness. You know, it's that what that woman said, or that person said. It's I know it as me.
Thank you.
So good, Lindsay. Good work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lindsay. And then we have, is that Emily? No, that's Colleen. Let me spotlight you, Colleen. Hang on a second. Okay, there you go.
Hi, Pali.
Hi, sweetheart.
My question is about the body and I've been going through a lot of stuff in the last 6 months and struggling with things, digestion and internal things. And I'm wondering about using the 6 steps for something happening in that way. Like, how do I feel right now about it? And so I'm curious about that.
Yeah, it's a really, really good thing to use the 6 steps. You know, the body takes the hit of the frequency of us being either clear or against ourselves, basically. And so, you know, the way in which we hit the ground running, more or less, incarnationally speaking, and then we are using the body on behalf of our wounded identity. And so the hit comes into whether it's the endocrine system, the neurology, what digestively, the muscular, whatever. the frequency of being caught in fear or being caught in self-rejection, the body takes the hit. I think there's a book that came out years ago called The Body Takes the Hit, right? But this is the way in which it does. And so using the 6 steps, you can use it like for a headache, right?
Mhm.
I'm triggered, my head's hurting, whatever. And using it, you can come to a place where you may find something where you've been, and not consciously necessarily, been neglecting or ignoring something that you need to take care of. These vehicles are at the mercy of our negative self-concept. And if there's it's a good reason to do this work, to come home to your true nature in order to relieve the body of that negative impact.
Mhm.
So I think what you're asking is the 6 steps useful in dealing with health issues or the body issues?
Yeah, and so just kind of approach it from the aspect of how am I feeling about the pain that I'm in right now, or whatever is happening, right? What feeling is that bringing up? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
because there will be a trigger there.
Yeah. All right. Thank
Good
you.
question, good work.
That
Mike.
helps.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. We have Tina over
Yeah.
here in the room. Who has a-
Hi. Yeah, this is all, I'm relating to this, so it came up this morning, one of my triggers, and last week I got sick and I was supposed to go on a retreat. And I had to cancel the retreat, and I was really looking forward to it, and I realized that, I didn't want to go and be coughing or, be making other people sick, and I canceled the trip, and I started feeling like I did something wrong, or I started noticing that I had feelings of, I wanted to prove that I was sick or something, and I realized that the message or the conclusion that I drew when I was younger from my mom when I got sick was that I did something wrong.
Oh.
And in the interactions that I had with her were, I was sick and that was a pain in her butt, to take care of me. I had to stay home from school. She had to change all her plans because I was sick. So I tried really hard not to ever be sick. And that all just came up for me this morning, and I really got to work through it with a good friend and cried and let these feelings out about, I didn't do anything wrong, by being sick. And now my issue is my mom is very much still alive, and I had been talking to her for several days in a row, and she still does that kind of thing where she will say things to me that make me feel I'm doing it wrong. I shouldn't be doing this. Why didn't you add this to that? And I guess my question is I do want to be with her and spend time with her. She lives in another state, but on the phone, but I just can't. She constantly triggers me. And how do I, she's my mom. I don't want to abandon her, but I did tell her I need I told her I was going to be on this retreat and I was going to unplug from everybody anyway. So I need time, without calling or texting. She wasn't too happy about that, but she's respected that space, which is good. But I really just, there's a part of me that doesn't want to talk to her. And I feel bad, I feel guilty, I feel bad. She's my mom. She's sick, she's frail, she does have medical issues, and, how do I be with her and still, take care of me so that I'm not, do I just keep let her triggering me? And so.
Well, we're gonna work that trigger right now. What is the trigger? My mom's a pain in my butt, or what?
Yeah.
What's the trigger?
Yeah, she, when I talk with her, I want to say this the only way I can put it. She sucks the life out of me.
Right.
Like she
Okay.
literally,
Yeah,
like, I feel like I have to take care of her all the time.
yeah.
Hmm.
So I'm triggered. That described it perfectly.
Yeah.
But the second step is it's about me.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that doesn't mean she's not playing her part. You know, central casting is alive and well and sending in the clowns for all of us. So you could, it's about me. It's
Yeah.
just there, right there.
yeah,
And the feeling is she's sucking the life out of you. Is that right?
yes.
Is there any more about that?
I just feel like I have to take care of her, like I can't have my own life.
I can't have my
And
own life. Mhm.
I'm 62, you know, she was
Mhm.
89.
Mhm.
It's like, and I've done so much work. I've been through therapy, analysis, you know, and I keep getting triggered.
Right. Yeah, because you haven't gotten to this piece about yourself that you concluded early on. So the feeling is that she sucks the life out of you, right?
Yeah.
And so using that feeling, the step 3 is to name the feeling. The step 4 is to recall of the earliest time you ever felt that way. It may not have been with her. It probably is, but it may not have been with her, where you felt like you were being had, or that you didn't, whatever.
Yeah, so often in my childhood.
Uh-huh.
And I had to just really shut her out because I knew in me, she wasn't, that what she was saying was not true. It didn't make sense. And the only way to keep my sanity was just to block her out.
Mhm. The feeling was that you were being
Like
what, right?
invaded.
Yeah.
Yeah, like she kept coming into my space all the time with things that were just not true. you
Right.
know?
Yeah, so.
Like I'd say, this is an apple, and she'd think, no, that's an orange, you know, I'm just using that. as an
Right,
example,
sure.
but
Yeah, so using that feeling of that being invaded, being like always opposition, something's oppositional all the time, using that feeling. When that was going on, Tina, you believed it meant something about you. I know that you were aware that your mother was playing a part. What did you believe about yourself?
yeah, that I must be stupid, I think, you know, like that I just, yeah, I'm not really sure.
Feel what it felt like when you and she were interacting that way. How old were you then?
Like I did something wrong.
Yeah, how old were you?
Probably 5.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
My sense is that what happened with that interaction with her is that you felt invalidated. And that whatever you believed about yourself at that point is the thing you continue to have to protect now. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to, you continue to have to avoid that
Yeah.
experience, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Avoid
she's
that
she's
feeling.
not the source of that experience.
So.
This is the
to
good
see
news.
that,
I know,
yeah.
but this is the good news, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you don't have that piece
Mhm.
from that early experience, that invalidation, you can say, I'm not talking, I mean, you can do a lot of things, but the person that you identify as coming out of that early childhood experience has no power here. You concluded that the way she treated you meant something about you. We've already pointed to it. What do you believe?
That I'm fundamentally bad,
Mhm.
you know?
Right.
I mean, yeah.
Right.
Fundamentally bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 6th step is to shine the light on that and to see that that was an unavoidable conclusion in those circumstances for that little Tina, right? But it was never true.
Yeah.
It's like seeing like a scene out of a Netflix series, right? And that was the action, and that was the interaction, and that was your conclusion, and that was the way you felt, right?
Yeah.
But that's all that it is. If you can see it, it's not who you are. I mean, this is one of the most profound, specific distinctions between who I am and what I have. Anything that you can see, it's what you have. It's not who you are, right? Right now, what we are looking at together is a conclusion that you made that I am bad. I mean, like in this most fundamental way, right? That's a story that was unavoidable for that little Tina to conclude. But you, as awareness, are the one that's looking at it. Identified as awareness, you don't have any problems with mom, and you talk to her only when you want to. But if you continue to identify with the daughter that at the heart of the core of her was bad, then the entire dynamic of this drama between you and her is still in play. If you can see it, it's a creation, it's an object, it's not who you are. I want to also just suggest that the way that you see, perceive, and know your mother to be is your creation. Well, we don't know who she is without that. She may be exactly the same, but it will not make the same impact on you. I forgive myself for ever having believed I'm bad. I know
That
who I
I did
am.
something wrong, I don't, I hear what you're saying,
Yeah,
and it just
good.
makes sense that,
Yeah.
I made a conclusion, it was my conclusion
That's
that I
right.
drew, and
That's right.
it really isn't true.
It really isn't true, exactly. It really isn't true. It was unavoidable. And that's what our young minds, in response to the external reality that's represented as a parent, it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
I consider it the cosmic joke, but but the availability for shifting perception, which shifts everything, is available. Yes, sit with this and see who you're being to yourself, right? You're blaming it all on her, but you are playing your part in it,
Yes,
as you know.
yeah.
I know you know that.
Yeah, I do see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Tina.
Well, I have a question. So you made me realize, I always thought I had the perfect childhood. It was amazing.
Oh, yeah, I know that one. I did that too.
And I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh my God, that's not true. And throughout my life, I've always felt like women were treated less than.
Yeah.
And I have a whole book that's ready to come out that's based on that. And I'm like, oh my God, hold on. I've got to.
We can have a disclaimer now.
And I've had several intuitive people come up to me and I have an eye issue. I'm almost blind in one eye. And they say, you're supposed to look at your life. You're supposed to look at yourself. And so the last few years, I've just been looking and looking and looking and looking. And I got it today, listening to you.
Yeah.
So I have a problem with all humanity
Right.
who, looks down on women.
Right.
So then, do I forgive all of humanity for?
For doing what you think they're doing?
Yeah.
You can start there. It's like when we do our own work, then the larger picture tends to clear up. It may not be as easy if you've got a book ready for publication that supports the distortion,
Go
right?
back and revise a little bit here.
Yeah, the dynamic at the collective level is looking like the male-female thing, looking like, less than caste system. I was just working with a client that's of Indian descent who was raised in India as in a lower caste, right? So, I mean, there's all of that going on. Oh, but at the heart of the matter, my experience, what is that, right? What's the truth from me? And from that place, I can make a difference by how I be with myself regarding it, how I start to tell the truth, right? What we find is that out of our woundedness, we are not capable of authenticity. Authenticity went out the window with that earliest way that you thought mommy's going to be happy if I'm playing with my toys in the crib when she comes in. It's not a conscious thought, but these are behaviors that I call them adaptive behaviors that we start to evoke, we start to, I should say, express. We start to express in response to the external reality, right? So we're way out of authenticity. Authenticity goes out the window the very first time our attention particles are out and we're like, oh, I remember when he came home last night and I was laughing and he didn't hit mommy. These little minds are going on like this. And then out of that, I start to feel like I can make a difference in this whole family thing, not a conscious choice. So it's, it's not, the solution for the problem is never at the level of the problem. And that's your perception into, your insight into the issue that you've been writing about probably has a reality to it for sure. Oh, but it may not be the whole story. It's probably not the whole story. The dark feminine has been running this reality for a long time. And looking like victims. And it's not that they haven't been victimized. I mean, I understand that. I've experienced that. But it's not as simplistic as it would seem. It's not. The duality is the duality between who I am and this reality that I create. And when that becomes one, it was like Lindsay was pointing to, there's no separation. This reality is arising in my consciousness, looking like this. Now, when we do this work on our early wounding, we are empowered to be present on our own behalf. And I haven't ever found anything else that gives you that. Because otherwise you are participating in a reality that has a distortion field in it. I don't know that that's helpful to you, Laurie.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to figure out how to work through this. I've created this world around me with this misperception for
Mhm.
75 years.
Right.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just
the
want to go
polarity
through
is
the
very-
wash.
Yeah, the polarity is compelling because that's the nature of the projected external reality. And that was what we call the fall, good and evil, black and white, right and wrong, and looking at male and female. And so all of that is through a perceptual lens that's not at the nature of what is the way reality actually works. This is a quantum field of frequency, and it shows up based in that frequency. It's
So we're at the bottom of the hour. I'm suggesting that you make a session with Pali and
I'd
really
love to have time with you.
Yes.
sweetheart.
go for that.
For sure.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. And for now, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording and we're gonna